Now that you have your Raspberry Pi connected to your network, it's time to proceed with installing GenMon. This is documented in the GenMon wiki on GitHub, and it's a fairly straightforward process. The first step you'll need to do is clone the repository from GitHub. This pulls the source code down to your machine so that you'll be able to proceed with the further steps of the installation. Now, once you've cloned the software, you need right now it is now running the install, which is the bash command for running the genmon main.sh file with the -i argument. That is the install. This process will take a couple of minutes. If you ever need support, you may be asked to run this command again, or a variation of this with different switches to do an update or even potentially an uninstall. Now you will be prompted with several questions. The first one is if you want to copy the configuration files to GenMon. You will typically answer yes to this. About the only time you might not is if you're planning on doing a restore from a prior install. The next question is what kind of connection you're using. If you are using the pint size hat, or if you have made your own cable that plugs into the header, you'll want to use the onboard serial option. If you have a USB to serial device you're using, you'll want to use the U option, and that does include the pint size USB Molex adapter. If you are using a serial relay bridge that is connected at your generator and using a virtual or containerized server for GenMon, then you'll want to choose the network option, which is T. So for this, we're choosing S because this is being set up to use the hat. The last question is setting up the Raspberry Pi onboard serial port. You should only see this if you chose the onboard serial, and you'll want to choose yes. This does a couple of things in the Raspberry Pi operating system configuration to make those 2 pins available for serial purposes rather than for connecting debug equipment such as a keyboard and display that is terminal based. Now, once it has finished those few steps, it will need to reboot. So go ahead and say yes, and then we'll resume after it has rebooted. Now that that install has finished, we should reboot the system just for cleanliness, and then we'll resume after that. All right, so now the Raspberry Pi has rebooted, and it's time to continue with verifying the install. So the first thing we'll need to do is change directory back into the GenMon folder, and then we're going to run the serial test. However, the first step we have to do with that is stopping GenMon. You can do that by calling startgenmon.sh with the word stop after it. Once that finishes, we'll change directory into the other apps folder, and then we'll execute python serialtest.py. Now, before you hit enter, you need to get a piece of metal to make contact between the 2 transmit and receive pins. If you have the pint size hat, those are the 2 pins on the top row on the right side. If you are using a homemade cable, you'll be bridging 2 of the pins that you had connected wires to. Now, I personally am living a bit on the wild side and using the scissors on my pocket knife to bridge those 2 pins together. Now, when you execute the script, you should very quickly see that it passed and had a loopback successful message at the end. At this point, you're good to go, and you can shut down GenMon if you want, or shut down the Raspberry Pi rather, and move on to installing it in your generator, or you can move on to opening up the GenMon web interface and configuring the security for GenMon, configuring all your notifications and that kind of stuff. There is so many possibilities with that I will not be making any videos to cover that part of the process. So I hope you have found this helpful, and at this point I'm going to shut down my Pi and have a good day.